On Pokémon Day 2025, we were introduced to Pokémon Champions, an upcoming game that appears to operate as a battle simulator, much like the Stadium games in the past. A flashy trailer showing off Dondozo and Aegislash, two Pokémon that have never been in a game together. The Dondozo terastallizes while an opposing Charizard Mega evolves. This could be an answer to modern games not having every Pokémon, a place where all Pokémon and all gimmicks are usable for battle. I'm sure many people saw this trailer and got very excited, and I'm sure there were also some that were worried. Could this be Pokémon making their own version of Showdown? Maybe we get a better product, maybe it's a worse product, and maybe Showdown suffers an undeserved fate in its wake. The thing that caught my attention the most was when they announced that this game is going to be compatible with Pokémon Home. While this means that you can use your actual Pokémon like the battle simulator games prior, this also starts to answer a problem that Home has had since it first released. When Pokémon Home released in 2020, it appeared to be a very bare-bones subscription service for storing Pokémon. To lay some important context, its predecessor, Pokémon Bank, cost only about $5 a year, and this new service costs about 4 times as much. The only Pokémon Switch games there were when it released were Let's Go and Sword and Shield. Let's Go has its weird exclusivity for transferring Pokémon in and out, and Sword and Shield were able to house any Pokémon that are in its code. This means that any Pokémon you transfer from the 3DS that weren't in these games were just stuck there, doomed to remain in what started to feel more like a jail than a home. This problem lessened as more games were released and became compatible. As of the writing of this video, there is only 11 Pokémon from before the Switch era that can't be sent to any Switch games. This really shouldn't be an issue to begin with. Simisear may have been the least favorite Pokémon of all, but that's no reason to lock it in Home for over 5 years. Also, it should be noted that compatibility for new games take months after they release. I can kinda understand not having it right away, forcing players to actually catch Pokémon in the new game itself, but anything longer than a month just starts to feel like stalling. To round off the features of the Switch version of Home, there's the Pokédex, special missions requiring catching certain groups of Pokémon from a certain game, the transferring from Bank, and being able to use points in your save files. An overall very lackluster list given the $20 yearly fee. But there is more. That's right, through the amazing power of modern technology, Pokémon Home is on both your Switch and your phone. This version also has some exclusive features, like the GTS, Wonder Trading, Friends, Friend Trading, game-specific Pokédexes, mystery gifts, achievements, and even the Pokémon Guidebook. That is a lot of stuff to be locked to a separate device. The massive lack of version parity all but forces players to make sure they can have both versions at any given time. If you want to make a trade on the GTS, and the Pokémon the trader is looking for is in one of your save files, you have to close out of the mobile version, open the Switch version, deposit the Pokémon into Home, save, close out of the Switch version, reopen the phone version, research for the Pokémon you wanted to trade for, and more likely than not see that it's already been traded away in the 5 to 10 minutes it took for you to prepare. Add in that the GTS still has the same problems it has always had, such as the flood of people looking for Pokémon at impossible levels, and it's just extremely non-user friendly. Well, why not just use the in-game GTS, you may ask? And to that the only answer is that there isn't one. None of the Switch games have their own GTS, you have to use the mobile version of Home. There are a lot of things that can be done to fix Home. A big one is just allowing for the features on the mobile version to also be on the Switch version. There is no reason that the reward for depositing Pokémon from the Switch games can only be claimed on mobile. While the addition of being able to send Pokémon from Go to Home gives maybe a little bit of a reason for a mobile version to exist, those are one-way transfers much like they are with Let's Go, and they could have been handled the same way. There really isn't a need for the mobile version. Outside of the version differences, Home also struggles with a reason to exist for a majority of players, outside of just moving Pokémon around. Not all players are going to have a massive living dex that can only be completely together at once in Home, or even care about completing the different Pokédexes and the challenges there are to complete. This application doesn't serve a major use to the average player. No real benefit to just storing your Pokémon on the cloud, as opposed to just keeping them in-game. But Champions changes that. Before we move on, if you are enjoying the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Doing so really helps out the channel and is greatly appreciated. Champions having connectivity with Home adds the reason to keep Pokémon in here. They are no longer just prisoners, waiting to be taken out on a brief field trip. but instead now able to fight at a moment's notice. Granted that they are allowed in Champions. Yeah, Dexit apparently hits the battle simulators now as well. Hopefully that changes down the line. People have genuinely been asking for something like this since Home first came out. People want a way to use their Pokemon, use their friends, and to have a reason to keep them in Home, and this is a good start. However, this won't be a simple one-and-done fix. This is only merely a step towards making Pokemon Home something that is truly worth the price. Not everyone is a battler. Not all players will be interested in Champions, and to them, this fixes nothing. They will still have 2 versions of a storage app fighting for features, where all they can really do is just look over a static list of the Pokemon they own. If they really want to fix Pokemon Home, version parity will obviously help, but I think the simplest answer comes by looking back. Home is far from the first way to store Pokemon in this manner, and while most are fairly similar, there's one that did something a little bit more. My Pokemon Ranch, a WiiWare title from 2008, was a storage application in the 4th generation. But this game didn't just store your Pokemon, it let them exist. The Pokemon you send to this title get to actually move around the ranch. They get to interact with each other. They get to have a semblance of sentience and character. Ranch used a more simplified art style, which could return, or they could just use the models that are already in the app. Imagine being able to open your phone whenever you want, pop into Home, and just see your Pokemon going about their business, having fun interacting with each other. They can even take it a step further. X and Y introduced the Pokemon Me feature, which allows you to pet, feed, and play with your Pokemon. Given that both the Switch and smartphones have touchscreens, this feature could easily be added as well. Just something to let your Pokemon act like your Pokemon, not just some static model that is nothing more than an entry in a long list of data. Obviously, these are big asks, and Home seemingly makes enough for them to not increase prices. Adding these features would more than likely not boost numbers to a point of being worth the time and effort it'd take to make something meaningful. But as someone who has been a Home sub since release, someone who has almost 4,000 Pokemon currently sitting in there, I dream of a day where the biggest media franchise in the world, one made up of whimsical creatures, remembers that not everything needs to be so clean and sterile, that things like these don't need to be completely utilitarian, that they can in fact have some whimsy. This has been Big Blast 99. Thank you all for watching, and have yourselves a goddamn good one.